How can we write a book if we're being a perfectionist? So in today's video, I'm really going to explore this because that perfectionism tendency, it can be useful. Like, it is important to have a level of excellence that we strive for. It can be really useful to have taste and to have things that we want to be really proud of with our writing. But what we want to make sure of is that this perfectionism isn't really tipping over into an obsession so that it's stopping us from making progress on our book, or it's even stopping us from even getting words on the page, and that we're not writing, and this idea of ever finishing a book is like a mirage in the desert and something that's never going to happen. So let's dive into how we can actually write a book if we are being a perfectionist. Often when I'm chatting with a client about this need to be perfect and the fact that it's really getting in the way of them writing a book, what's really useful for them to understand is that this need for perfectionism is actually a strategy. Now, it's usually a strategy that's developed for any number of reasons. It might have been a strategy that has been developed in order to make sure that you don't get into trouble, or it's a strategy that you've developed in order to make sure that people really like you because they really like the work that you're doing. And so this strategy is a little bit like the fact that you've learnt to do something specific in order to get a specific result. And so getting it perfect brings you that specific result. And so what's happening when we have these perfectionist tendencies is that we are valuing the result that that strategy brings us. Now, the trouble is that this strategy would have been developed a long time ago, and it was a strategy that probably wasn't developed for the act of writing a book. So usually these perfectionist strategies, we develop them at school. And so we might have developed that strategy, like in my case, I developed perfectionist tendencies to make sure that I didn't get into trouble. Like, my teachers were very, very strict. They expected a lot from me, and so I would try to make my work as perfect as possible. Otherwise, what might end up happening would be the teachers would be shouting at me because my work was not of a really decent standard, or was not the level of work that they had come to expect from me. And so I really found that when I came to write a book, because I was bringing the same strategy, I was writing the book, but almost as if I didn't write it perfectly, I would get into trouble. And so rather than the value of, I really value finishing this book, I had this value of, I don't want to get into trouble, or I don't want to piss people off. So when it comes to firstly really figuring out how to shift these perfectionist tendencies in a way that's going to enable you to write a book, you first of all want to get really clear about what you're currently valuing. So take a moment to really think about this. If you're writing your book and you're editing it loads, or even you're thinking about what you're going to write about, but you're thinking about it so much to wait to the idea to get perfect before you even start writing, what must you be valuing? When you get clear about what the value is, you then understand what this perfectionist strategy is in place to achieve. So that's the first place. You get clear of the value. Now, in order to start to shift this tendency, especially if you really feel like it's getting into the obsessive and it means that you're not making progress on your book, it means that A, you're not finishing your book, or it means that B, you're taking ages, like editing at a sentence level, like changing a comma here or changing the order of words there, but you're not making progress in your book, or you haven't even started. If you're really seeing that it's getting in the way to that level, you now need to have a different value. And when you develop that different value, you can replace the current value, which in my case was not to get into trouble, with a new value, which is finishing my book, or which is getting my book published, or which in many cases can be very powerful for working through perfectionism. You have a new value of, I value getting feedback that's going to show me how to improve. Again, we can really want to get it perfect the first time round, and we hand it over to someone to read our book so that they don't give us any feedback of, oh, that needs to be changed or that character needs to develop, because we want it to be perfect, because we don't want to have to do that second round of edits, or we want the first draft to have everything in it that it needs to have. And so I find it really, really beneficial to start to value the journey, or to start to value the process of getting it wrong. So it can be beautiful to explore things like, what's the value of making a mistake with your writing? And to actually take some time to really think that through. Like, your initial response might be like, there's no value in making a mistake. Like, I want to get it perfect. That's why I'm a perfectionist. But to understand that that's not what you are or who you are, it's simply a strategy that you have developed, that you started to use at a certain point in order to have a specific result. So what new strategy do you want to develop in order to have a different result? So what are you going to start to value that's different? It might be that you value finishing a really rough first draft, because that means that you're brave. That means that you've really pushed the bar. That means that you've really taken yourself into new territory and done things differently. It might be that you value a complete, finished, 5 edits done book. And it might be that you value that because that then means that you can move to the next process in the path to publication, which might be querying an agent or approaching an independent publisher or self-publishing. So you want to get really clear about what your new value is. And another really nice area to explore, as opposed to, as well as what can be valuable about getting it wrong, is to explore what can be even more beneficial than the work being perfect. So you're looking at a higher value than perfectionism. So the work being perfect might have been a strategy to have one result, as in, I'm not going to get into trouble or I'm going to please people. But what's even more valuable than the work being perfect? So you might be like, well, what's even more valuable than the work being perfect is the work being completed, or the work being sent to somebody to read, or the work being enjoyable to create. Now, I really want to say that you're not going to change these values overnight. It's not like, oh, here it is. I watched a YouTube video and the lady in the YouTube video said to choose a new value, and I chose a new value, and right, everything's got to be perfect. You've got to start to practice that new value. So you want to understand that it's continual work, and you're developing your relationship with this value and you're practicing it. So again, you're going to come to your writing each day, you're going to remind yourself of your value, because that old strategy is part of a habit, and you're going to just really naturally fall back into that habit. And so you want to remind yourself, what's my new value? Is my new value making a mistake so that someone can point it out and help me learn? Or is my new value creating a really rough draft because that means that it's finished? So once you're really clear about what that new value is, you want to start practicing it. So you come to your laptop each day, you open up your work in progress, you start to work on your novel, and you're like, how would I write this if I valued having a finished chapter at the end of every week? Or how would I write this if I valued having work that I could show someone to read at the end of every month? How would I be working on this project if I valued progress, not getting it perfect? So making progress rather than everything having to be in place and absolutely right and absolutely perfect. So there we go, my friends. We do value work to really help us shift from that strategy of perfectionism, which is designed to achieve a certain result. So we're changing it to achieve a different result by creating a different value. So I really want to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below, what new value could you have rather than it needing to be perfect, or it needing to be right, or everything needing to be in place? What new value could you have? So share in the comments below, and also share with that value, if you really practice that value, what difference is it going to make as you're writing your book? I would really love to hear from you, love to hear your comments, and also I can then give you feedback and we can have a little dialogue and make sure that you're really on track with finishing your book. And if you like the idea of being on track, and if you're new here and you haven't yet found the Right No Matter What community, then come and find us. You'll find a link below. It's a community of committed creatives. It's live content, it's accountability, it is support as you grow your creative career. So come find us with the link below and join the Right No Matter What community. We would love to have you with us. Really hope you got value from today's video. Really want to make sure that you are making progress and that perfectionism isn't holding you back from writing your book. So if you are committed, if you're committed to really practicing those new values, then give me a thumbs up. Let me know. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care till then.